Welcome to the She Slays the Day podcast with Dr. Lauryn Brunslick. Direct, soulful, comedic, advice for female chiropractors' most stagnating questions. Let's talk business, marriage and relationships, momming, and self-development. Here's your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunslick.
Okay, She Slayers. So before we jump right into this episode, I wanted to take a moment to recognize the passing of Dr. Jeannie Ohm. Any chiropractors listening, I don't need to tell you what she was for our profession. Now, to the non-chiropractors listening, you need to realize that we lost a fucking legend last week. If you know a pediatric or prenatal chiropractor in your life, go give him a hug because this shook us. This woman was like breaking glass ceilings and moving mountains in our profession, like way before the ratio of graduating classes was 50-50 men, women. She was just like a beacon of light in advancing pediatric and prenatal chiropractic. She taught thousands, pretty much any chiropractor who knows anything about mommies and babies learned from this woman. And I am going to go back and remove out pretty much, literally, every pediatric or prenatal chiropractor learned from this woman. She put the fear of God in us if we dared accidentally say that Webster technique turned babies. Like she would roll over in her grave right now if she thought any of us were implying that Webster technique could turn a breech baby. It can't. She had us at one point, just moved with tears. Oh my God. I remember I was at a conference and she showed this video of an elephant giving birth. And I'm bawling because the baby elephant basically comes out dead, right? Like in the video, you're like, that baby elephant is dead. And so everyone's bawling, everyone is silent. And I remember turning to the person next to me. I don't even know if I knew them or not. And I said, if this goddamn video ends with that baby elephant still dead, I am standing up, booing, and running out of this room crying. So, the baby elephant got adjusted by the mama elephant. Basically, okay, every non-chiro, or if you haven't seen the video, you're thinking I'm crazy, but the mom elephant takes her trunk, wraps it around the baby elephant's neck, and does this yank, and the baby elephant comes to life. It's insane. Oh my God. So anyways, she was great. It just feels like we lost her too soon. So with that, I want to shift a little into my interview today, who is another legend within the pediatric chiropractic world. Dr. Nancy Cooper has been in practice for over 25 years. She comes from a long line of chiropractors. I swear I think she says it in the interview, 20-some chiropractors in the family, or 21 years. She's done pretty much every pediatric training ever to exist. She's done them all. And she currently serves on the board of the Women Chiropractors Association. We hit up a lot of topics in this interview, including what it's like growing up in such a chiropractic strong philosophical house, her journey through burnout in practice and realizing that she was going to do things her own way, and all the crazy mom guilt that we put on ourselves as mama chiros. So she's really an amazing woman. And I'm super excited for you to hear this conversation. But first, I have to tell you all about special discounts just for our She Slayers. So if you go to sheslayspodcast.com/SheSlaysSavings, because Kirby hates me and he just wants me to say Sally sells seashells by the seashore every time I have to say that website, She Slays Shavings, you will see some of our special savings for you guys. So one is 10% off Sandy Spines. She is a super awesome watercolor artist. She has an Etsy store, lots of just different spines. They're beautiful artwork for your practice. And you can use promo code She Slays to get 10% off. Or you can get 20% off your first month of coaching with the one and only Megan Sanvey, which is episode 10. Go back if you didn't listen to that yet. She's a woman who kicks my ass in the gym virtually every week. I am cursing her. She makes these really custom workout programs for me. She was helping me with eating and losing weight and just my health goals, getting my mind right. But right now our number one goal is getting a Beyonce booty. So you can get 20% off your first month of coaching with her. There's There's more details on the website. And then finally, 20% off your first month with the Progressive app from Connected and Inspired Media. They just launched, I think like a month or two ago. And I got to be a part of their beta team to like test out the app. It's so beautiful and well done. It's an app for pediatric and prenatal chiropractors to use with their patients to save time. So you're not having to like show all of these different exercises for kids on brain neurodevelopment and pregnant moms. It's just really well done. So it's an app for your practice to your patients. And again, promo code, you guessed it, She Slays. So we're going to read our review. This one comes from Trey Goss. I don't know, or maybe that's short for Tracy Goss, or I don't know what else that would be. I love how I like to dig in though to each and every one, like, what's your screen name mean? So this says, the podcast is exactly what we female chiropractors and entrepreneurs need, and we didn't even know it. Lauryn is like your best friend. She's cool and candid, and her heart is definitely to serve. She speaks to the areas of life that we as women are told not to make a big deal about and gives real practical advice for running a practice and living your life. Listen and love it. Thank you so much. Seriously, I appreciate those a lot. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I just go and watch reviews or listen to reviews about you guys talking about me. I'm just joking. I'm not that pathetic. But I do really appreciate them and love them. So right before we kick into our conversation, I'm going to lead us in prayer. And like I said in the past, a million times, if this ain't for you, fast forward 30 seconds. It's fine. Dear beautiful and glorious God, you stole a good one from us this month, leaving us a bit speechless. I trust that she's up there adjusting everyone barefoot, caring for all the babies and mamas up in heaven. Her body will be missed, but her spirit and passion hopefully will live on in each of us to continue the amazing work she started. Please help us realize that one person never could have moved the mountain before us, and that it's going to involve all of us stepping into our own glory that you've planted in us, and working together to get this shit done. Love you so much. Amen. All right, and with that, here is my conversation with the one and only Dr. Nancy Cooper. Press record. All right, we're officially recording. My biggest fear is that I do like the greatest interview ever and I didn't hit record. And I'm like, whoops. Okay, so Dr. Nancy Cooper, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited that you're neither of us work Fridays, so yet here we are working, right?
Yeah, this is a great way to spend a Friday, that's for sure.
So I know of you. You and I have like, I don't want to say a weird history with each other of like never really formally meeting, but being in the same room and in the same like group many times over the last like 5-6 years. Our paths just keep crossing.
Yeah, they do, especially since we kind of practice the same. So I think
it's a small pond.
Yeah.
Like female chiropractors wanting to impact other chiropractors who really only care about pediatrics and
right.
Like kind of run together.
Yeah, they really do.
So, but for those that don't know of you, will you share? I mean, you've got to be sick of answering this question. But like, it's just so, I need to know. Can you please tell us just kind of like, what's your story? How'd you get into chiropractic? How long you been in practice? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so I'm like a kid. My dad's a chiropractor. My uncle and my dad both started the family practice, the family profession, I suppose. There's 22 of us now in the profession. So I grew up, and they were pretty hardcore philosophy. They're the Michigan doctors that they all used to hang out with, the Sid Williams and those guys back in the day. So they had these like monthly get-togethers. So that we were so involved in chiropractic as kids because we'd go to the meetings with the dads and play with the other chiropractic kids. So, and I would sit in his little lay lectures he'd have, for his patients because he had really big cookies. So if I listened to the lecture, I got the cookie. So I listened to those for years. And then I started kind of talking to my little friends about chiropractic. And I just really developed a passion for it and developed, I kind of wanted the world to be like that, like how I was living. And so in middle school, I decided to become a chiropractor. And so I set my whole high school curriculum geared up to go into Palmer because that's where my dad went. So I had to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have to. Actually, he wanted me to go to Parker because he thought Parker had a better business college.
Okay.
He thought we needed business, which I thought was interesting. But I went to Palmer because that's where we all went. And, I got out early. I was like only 23 when I graduated. And
did you lie about your age? I was like, I had turned 24 like a month prior to getting my license. And so I remember like for the first 2-3 years, patients would just look at me with this like crooked eyebrow of like, how old are you? And I'd be like, right? I'm not telling. And they're like, no, seriously, how old are you? And I'm like, no, seriously, I'm not telling.
Yeah, they didn't ask me, but they always would comment how young I looked, which was a little hard. So it was, so I've been in practice 32 years now. Yeah. So, it's been great. It's been a journey. I've learned a lot and made a lot of mistakes. And hopefully I have it right now, but I'm sure I'll make more mistakes. But
right.
Yeah,
that is life.
Yeah.
So a couple things I want to dig into deeper on that is like so you talked about what being like this chiro kid was like. First of all, just a story from this morning, like I am not nailing raising chiro kids. Like my kids get adjusted every week. We like come hell or high water do they get antibiotics. But like literally this morning, my 4-year-old she woke up last night with a fever, puked, and we're like, all right, well, I guess you're staying home today. So I'm holding her downstairs while I'm drinking coffee, and she's fine. She's not even running a fever anymore. She's like running around. She goes, Mom, I want to go to the doctor.
Oh.
And so, because like going to the hospital is like fun. They get to go like once a year. They don't get stabbed. So like their experience is not traumatic. They get, and so my husband goes, Ty, you are literally being held by a doctor, right? Like we're trying to like teach them. And she goes, no, I want to go to the real doctor.
Oh, heart. Oh my gosh.
I just like, we both just roll our eyes and we're like, I don't know how much to like cram that philosophy down their damn throat, but I can tell you I am not nailing this philosophical chiropractor in the home.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think the difference is when I was a kid, people didn't go to the doctor as much as they're going now. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't remember my little friends. Only the really sick ones would go to the doctor, but you didn't ever hear of your friends going to the doctor very often. And we never had a doctor. My dad was our doctor, and if we were sick, we'd just go get adjusted. So when I was a kid, I never actually went to a medical doctor. In fact, I don't think I was until I was in my 20s that, you had to go for your girl stuff that I finally went to a doctor. I never did go, and I didn't hear about it around me. But I think now, because kids are going to the doctor so often, the school requires them to have a note, so they have to go to the doctor. The kids kind of feel left out. Like my daughter, she said the same thing to me. Like, I want to go to the doctor. I'm like, oh my God.
And where does this real doctor, like, where do you hear that? And she said that like for the first time, I think when she was like 2.5. And we were just like, oh my gosh, it's like innate. How is this innate?
Well, how did she
like, no, Mom, you're not a real doctor. I'm like, damn you kids. So that is really cool, because one of the questions I had planned on asking you, because I wanted to talk about momming and kids and all this stuff, is do you think that men feel some of the same guilt? But like hearing that your dad, even back in the time was your mom working?
No.
Right. So like you could have easily stayed home. Like there was no need, I'm assuming, for you to be going to those new patient seminars or, whatever that was.
Yeah.
But like your dad was bringing you along and like you were hanging out in the office and things like that. And so I think that, does kind of answer of like, well, at least your dad did feel the need to share that with you. And
oh yeah, they were very, their world was chiropractic, everything. Their friends were chiropractors. it was everything. I didn't know any different, really. And his office was in our house too. So
Okay.
he had one of those home practices. So I got to interact with the patients too, who thought my dad was wonderful. And I thought, oh my gosh, to be able to have people think that of you, how cool would that be? Yeah. So made me look up to him even more, with what he did. So.
Do you think, when we look back on like the time of the Fred Barges and the Sigafus and like all that, like the glory days of, it was all men, unfortunately, but like, do you think that we have anything even remotely close nowadays? Like, to me, it seems harder to like live and breathe chiropractic as much as it seemed like it was in those guys back then.
Yeah, those guys were, they were mavericks. I remember my dad going on the radio. He ran for office because he wanted to change the world, in our little community. They were just mavericks. They really, really tried hard. They didn't care what people thought of them. And they were straight chiropractors. It's funny because my dad moved to Arizona when I was in high school. And he told me he got an ultrasound unit. He goes, I'm a mixer now.
I'm so fancy.
I'm a mixer. But they were doing everything. They were out in the communities talking about chiropractic all the time. Of course, there wasn't social media and all that like there is now to squelch what they were doing. So, they were talking it. They were out there doing it, living it. Nothing got them down.
Yeah. It's just interesting. I feel like from women that write into the podcast, there is, and I've talked, with Dr. Rosemary about this, of like, it feels like there's a sense of loneliness now within a lot within chiropractic, that there's this kind of like, I feel up against Goliath in my town and I feel alone. And that's really hard. And so it's just like trying to figure out like, how did those dudes do it? Like, how did they consistently feel so fearless and not alone? And I think that's kind of part of the mission behind the WDC though.
Yeah. They actually, like I was saying, they met monthly, all
like
there
in
was
person.
Yeah.
Obviously they didn't have Zoom.
Yeah, no, they didn't Zoom. No social media. They got together monthly. They brought their families, like the guys would be in the basement meeting and the women and the kids would all be playing everywhere. And that's and they'd have, in the summers, they'd have chiropractic picnics. And, so they, their community, I think is what raised them up. So I think now we're doing it online. And that's kind of where we come from with the women chiropractors, is really trying to build a community of women chiropractors. Because I think I remember when Cindy and I were talking about this, starting this group, that we were both alone, because I was at a point in my career where I needed somebody to talk to because no one around me was doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But and it's like you can't really talk about that because you can't talk if you're doing really well, and then Cindy was going through her personal challenges, with her divorce, and we were looking for people to talk to and have community with. And that's what prompted this whole program, just to bring women together because we have really unique challenges.
Share a little bit about that, because when you and I did like a pre-talk before this, I had no idea that like the Women Chiropractors group on Facebook that has over 7,000 members.
Almost 8,000.
Yeah. That you like started that.
Yeah, I was just because it was what was going through with Cindy when she went through her divorce. She was one of the female chiropractors that married a chiropractor, and she pretty much stayed home and raised the kids. She dabbling, go see some pregnant women, what all the women do. Mm-hmm. That was our assigned duty. And then she'd go work a little bit, but well into her career, her husband ended up leaving, and he left her with the practice. And here she had not really practiced for all these years. So she didn't know how, to build her practice or anything. So she started from scratch, and she's asking for help from people. She, reached out to me, and because at that point, most of her family had died. So she had no one to really reach out to, because she had 3 chiropractors in her family, or 3, her dad and 2 brother and her sister, and they were all gone. So myself, and then we have another cousin that she's close to that's also a chiropractor. We really helped her. And then her community in the Detroit area, she had some friends that started helping her. So then she's, we were talking about Facebook, and I said, well, maybe we should make a group. And, I just started to learn about groups. And so we found somebody who was younger than us to, make the group.
Yay for millennials.
Yeah. So she actually created the group. And then we just started kind of talking in it. And then I posted something. I was on the ICPA group website, and somebody was looking for something. I said, well, you should check out our women's Facebook group that we have. And then once I did that, this thing exploded, and then it's just been going. I mean, we were like, wow, we have 700 people, and never did we think we'd be close to 8,000 actual chiropractors and students. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it is a blessing to have such a positive group of women, but I do think that the pop-ups, and just honestly, just in person too, there's nothing that replaces like seeing a face and sharing a cup of coffee. And so, that's hard for me. I practice in a town or just in an area where there is one other female for like 50 miles.
Oh, wow.
So it's all men.
Yeah.
And I'm like the weird one that like markets and does stuff. So even then, like that female is like, I don't want to hang out with you. Like, you're my competition, like this like lack mentality. And I'm like, why can't we just like hang? And
yeah.
anyway, so I just got to like drive down to Eau Claire where I'll meet some friends and talk philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said you've been in practice 32 years.
Yeah.
And you are strongly pediatric, right?
Yeah. So
are you strongly pediatric?
I am now.
Okay.
Yeah, I started, I had that vision of healing or helping people with their health. When I got into chiropractic, I wanted to be a holistic doctor, work via the spine, change health. Well, people wanted pain relief. And so I kind of fell into that. I was like giving them what they wanted and started to get burned out. And I was getting into my 30s and I thought, well, I'm not going to have kids. So, and I really would like to, follow my passion, my vision. And so I started the Diplomate program for pediatrics through the ICA. And my goal was, I got the credentials, I'm going to see a lot of kids, and, that's my dream. And then while I was in the program, I actually met my husband, and we actually ended up pregnant. So anyway, that's I'll add to that later. But anyway, coming out of the pediatric program in 2006, I started focusing on kids. And then it got to the point in my practice where I could actually now exclusively say I only see kids and pregnant women as new patients. I still have some of my patients I see from before, but I have an associate now that helps with the adults. And then I just strictly do kids and pregnant women along with my older people here and there. Yeah. People. Yeah.
Okay. So then I have so many good questions. I'm trying to figure out which order to ask them in. So how did you transition to that? Like, how did you tell people, like, were you worried that there wasn't going to be enough? Because I mean, you practice in a town of 60,000.
Yeah. We're a suburb of Indianapolis. Plus we have people travel, to us. I think it got to a point where I was starting to just see an influx of new patients that were either pregnant or their kids. And so I had the foundation of, I can just see them now. I don't need to see the adults as a new patient. And then I really, really started, when I would talk to people, I'd say, if I met them out and they wanted to come see me, I said, well, you'd have to see my associate because I just see kids. So I really
just makes you even more like attractive.
Yeah.
And, like, I can see so many people being really nervous about like, oh my gosh, would I make enough money? Would there be enough patients? But I think if I hear like, oh, you only see kids, like you won't see adults. Ooh, now I really want you to see my kids.
Yeah. I know people would say, do you see adults too? And I'm like, well, if you really, really ask, if you know the special word to get in, but no, I don't, very rarely will I take an adult patient now at this point.
So what did that do for your burnout? Because you said you had kind of gotten like and it's so common, right? Like we're in school and I don't know if this is the same for you, but like, you like imagine what this practice is going to be like, and it's going to be wonderful. And you're going to explain chiropractic and everyone's going to get it. It's gonna be great. And then you get like this guy who's just like, yeah, I need to be fixed today. And you're like, this isn't what I pictured, but I really need a new patient because I'm trying to pay back my loans. Yeah. And yeah, it can be exhausting. So what did that do for your burnout?
It is so fun now. I mean, it is so fun in practice because now it's like, I don't even say much because I'm not a really big talker. I'm not a big one of those people that really hound my philosophy down people's throat, but it's amazing how people are just getting it. And then pregnant women are just bringing their babies in. And I'm like, and to me, I'm amazed. It's like, wow, they're really getting it. And I don't know if this is an innate passage. It's just going to them, but I feel like it's finally come into fruition, what I've always envisioned. And now I'm seeing moms bring their kids in just because it's cold season, and they want to get their adjustments so their kid doesn't get sick. And I'm like, but I never really even talked to them about that. It's like they're just getting it. And I think it's just so fun because it's now I'm practicing the way I wanted to. And now now it's kind of inspiring me to go further. Like, okay, I'm going to take this to the masses now because now I've developed the confidence and the knowledge, and I feel like I can just do it now. Whereas before, when you're first starting in practice, you're like you said, I just got to pay my bills. I'll take anybody,
Mm-hmm.
Now it's different.
It's a tough question, or at least I think it's a tough question. Do you think you could have started right out of the gates, $0 coming in, being this strong and like, nope, this is my dream and vision? Or do you think that kind of getting some patients under your belt, even though they weren't your ideal, like gave you a jumping off place to fine tune and create your dream practice?
Yeah, I think because of my personality and being the way I am, I think if I was a more driver personality, I could do it the other way, but I'm not. I'm like one-on-one. I got to get to know people, talk to them that way. I would have I recommend going niche to anybody but it would have, the way I did it, I built the confidence for sure. My adjusting skills, everything. I had to build the confidence before I could do that. And then when I started seeing people coming in and referring their babies and their kids in, then that built my confidence even more. And then now it's like, I'm there.
Well, and I don't know if the driver thing, because I would say I'm a driver. Anybody who knows me is like, yeah, you think. And I've been asked before because I've had an intern and some students shadow, and now we're like a 98% cash practice, right? And they're like, students are like, oh, did you ever take insurance? I'm like, oh yeah. When we first started, we were like 80 to 90% insurance. Okay. And they're like, well, I want to start no insurance. And I'm like, that is cool. I don't know that I would have. Right. Like, there is, for me, I look back and honestly, with my faith, I think that I wouldn't look back and change anything because it turned out the way it was supposed to.
Right.
Like I look back and I'm like, it was kind of nice to not be stressed about, because I think that I would have been sitting there, on the day when you're first building and you're like, woohoo, I saw 5 people today. Yay! I think it would have been like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Should I this? Should I that? And we grew kind of like a weed. And then it allowed me to see that I was like living this, life and experience that burnout. And there's so much to be learned from that of like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
You experience what you don't like, and then it gives you the confidence because being cash is, I'm assuming you're cash. I should have asked.
Actually, I'm not.
Oh, you're not? Okay. Yeah. So like whatever you stick as like, this is the practice that is important to me, it gets tested. Yeah. So whether it's cash versus insurance or pediatric versus geriatric or whatever, the universe likes to test it and likes to kind of like dangle that carrot of like you said, that this is what you want. But what about this? And if you haven't kind of experienced the other, I feel like it's a lot harder during those hard times to be tested of like, But since you've lived it, you're like, no, I ain't going there. I don't have no desire. I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you market? You said like people are just kind of coming in and they just get it. Like, so you don't do any marketing or?
No, I didn't. I was in practice for a lot of years, and we were seeing, an average amount of people. And then I actually took this, signed up for this course with a guy that's not a chiropractor, and I started marketing. And it was when the internet was becoming a thing, and I would spend a whole day just like on the internet and learning about the internet and doing some things that he talked about doing. And it tripled my practice, just when I started marketing. And now we're to the point, I think with social media and just the fact that we've gained a big reputation around the area, that we really don't need to market. I still do like to, I do Facebook Lives interviewing local practitioners or local resources for my patients. So I kind of keep out there all the time. I'm trying to stay relevant, but I really don't do any, Facebook ads, Google ads. I don't try to rank high in the listings. I don't do any events mainly, unless, I really want to support, a cause or something. But we consistently have a lot of new patients. But, we do take insurance, and it's a low barrier of entry for us. And also it serves a population that of babies that wouldn't come in ordinarily. And so I really want to be able to help these babies. So
it's totally can relate to that. That is one of the hardest things. I feel like there's so much, what's the phrase? Like, we kind of like put this like, oh, you're a cash practice on like a pedestal. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong like with it. And I don't feel like enough people talk about, so like in Wisconsin, Medicaid is actually fantastic for chiropractic.
Yeah.
And I live in a county of 50,000 people where the median income is 42,000 for a household. And it's like, there's a lot of meth. And so therefore you have a lot of like foster children and children, and it's something that like I legit struggle with of like, shoot, should we? Did I just go out of network because like I wanted to like put that Girl Scout badge on of like, we're cash practice, and so it's like, I do struggle with it. And, so it's not bad.
Yeah. Claudia Honorig and I were talking about that this year because she's a big pediatric practice out in California. And she's been in practice, I think, maybe a year longer than I have. And she was asking me if I was cash. I said, no, I do insurance. And she says, are you going to go cash? And I said, maybe down the road. I said, but I've been in this so long, it's like, you develop your routines, and it's like, being in this 32 years, do I really want to, change it up? Here you're thinking more retirement, not about like changing your whole practice. So, and she agreed. She's like, yeah, why change anything when you've been doing it so long? So that's kind of where we're at. And, really we collect 70% cash anyway, but it's, but the patients can come in, and especially the Medicaid patients, in which there are a ton of little babies, that need help, and the foster kids, like you're saying, that, we see those too. And it's neat that the foster parents will bring them in, here. So.
Yeah, totally agree. So let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about your daughter, because you kind of were like, oh, that's a tangent. Yeah. Like you know what? I really honor and respect that you as a communication person were able to be like, I am not going to go down that tangent because I get sidetracked by squirrels all the time. Yeah, so let's circle back to your daughter.
Yeah.
How that like changed everything.
Yeah. So here I grew up a kid with, no vaccines, no medication. My very first antibiotic was when I was in labor with my daughter, because I didn't have the strep test before I went into the hospital, that they figured they needed to give me a prophylactic antibiotic. So, so I grew up this very holistic lifestyle. Ended up towards the end of my pregnancy, 34 weeks, they needed to induce and get my daughter out because I had what's called HELP syndrome. I just say it's because I ate too many donuts, but it's like it's a really bad form of eclampsia. And if they don't get the baby out, there's a chance I could have died. So I didn't know that. Anyway, so she was born. They tried to induce, and it ended up being a C-section. And she was she was a healthy little baby. She was just little. She was only 4 pounds, 7 ounces. I believe when she was in me, I don't think she moved at all. So I think she was stuck in my pelvis. And you could see by her head, the shape of her head and everything, that there was something wrong. She was in the NICU for 12 days. They gave her antibiotics right off the bat because they thought she had pneumonia, and you feel helpless. Here you are, I'm in the diplomate program, I'm studying pediatrics, and I'm letting them give my daughter, antibiotics. Didn't let them do the vitamin K shot, didn't let them do Hep B, but antibiotics, which led to first year of screaming every time she pooped. It was horrible. But I didn't even know, even at that time, didn't even know what to do about that. I didn't know about probiotics. I mean, this is how chiropractic it was. I mean, we never did even really supplements, So we had that issue. She had the cranial issues. She couldn't hold her head up for like 5-7 months. I can't remember. She had this little, I called her a little dinosaur. She had this little tiny neck and this big head, and it's bossing, where it's like the forehead sticks out, the back sticks out, and it's like pushed in on the sides. So I had her worked on by the top, pediatric chiropractors that were teaching me. So we had like a rough year of just trying to help her. Yeah. And so then as she grew up, she was getting like monthly headaches. And so I started taking her to natural doctors everywhere, trying to figure it out. Had these headaches kept continuing. She went to body workouts everywhere. I was studying more and more and more, and just researching and trying to figure it out, talking to other doctors. And, it was a struggle. Here I grew up a certain way, and now I'm having this daughter who, is still not vaccinated, no medications, just the antibiotic at birth, but she was still having these issues. So that really, really fueled my passion for infants, and trying to figure out what's wrong with them. And so she's 15 now. Through all the trials, all the doctor visits, all the body work things, nobody can find out what's causing these headaches. She gets them quarterly now. And I think what I've realized is it all comes back down to chiropractic. I look way back at her birth history, the way her head was shaped. And I think every time she goes through a growth spurt, it just pulls on her cranium, and it just causes like a vertigo, vomiting, headachy kind of thing. So, I just went back to my foundation, and that's, there's no pill that's going to fix this. There's nothing. So, but it did fuel me to really, I've studied primitive reflexes. I've studied nutrition, everything, because of trying to help her.
Right.
Yeah. So you feel like a failure, as a doctor, especially a board certified pediatric chiropractor.
Yep. And God loves to mess with us, I think, the most, of like, but it adds so much empathy too. Like, we have a similar story with my second. So both of my births were great. So I got to put that Girl Scout badge on of like, no, vaginal non-medicated birth. But then God was like, you know what? You're getting a little cocky for your britches.
It's so true.
Right. So about 4 days after my second was born, she had this like little pus thing around her umbilical cord. And I'm like, that's weird. What is that? And so I sent a photo to the midwife, and they're like, oh, put like golden seal on it and blah, blah, blah. We'll watch it. I'm like, okay. So then a couple days later, fast forward like 5 days, it's gotten worse. It's definitely gotten worse. And now she has multiple spots on her abdomen. And we're like, okay, I think we should just go in. So we take her into urgent care. She's 9 days old. They don't see babies like that in urgent care. So they send us to ER. And I'm just like, we're going to get like a topical fungal or, whatever, like just what is type thing. So we go in, and they're like, that's a staph infection.
Oh my God.
We are admitting your daughter for IV antibiotics for at least 48 hours. And so I'm just like, are you joking? I did all the things right to try and protect her from like the medical, like all the stuff and invasive, and like let her have this like great. And then they're like, no, we're just going to like inject antibiotics into her blood for 48 hours straight. And I'm like, oh no.
You know, right?
So I didn't get that badge. So I'm glad your daughter turned out well, you know, that these, it wasn't anything, you know, need surgery or that, but like, let's go back to her birth. Did you emotionally struggle with that ego of, I had to have, because I've sat in a room when I was, I remember being in Jeannie Ohm's class for the ICPA, and it was like day 2, and she is showing videos. I'm assuming you've done Jeannie Ohm's Webster class. Yeah. She shows like C-sections, and she does not hold back on the videos that she shows. And I remember this female chiropractor standing up, like she had a question, she stood up and asked it. I don't even remember what the question was, but it had something to do with C-section, and like you could just tell, and she starts bawling because 7 years ago she had to have a C-section, and it was like it had happened last week, and you could just feel in the room, like, first of all, you just wanted to hug her and be like, girl, oh my gosh, this does not make you less of a mom, less of a chiropractor, but you could tell she was still carrying this, like, I didn't get that badge. And what does that say about me as a mom, as a, like, you know, like, we're supposed to be able to do this. We are told the body innately, as long as you do X, Y, and Z, this should be the outcome. And like, you could tell she was struggling. Was that something that you dealt with at all? Or you were just like, meh?
Oh God, no, it was horrible. Yeah, I just felt like, you know, I just felt like a failure. It felt like, you know, here I grew up this whole way, you know, I did everything natural until I was 39 years old. And now it's like my whole life just changed in an instant. It was horrible. I felt like I was robbed. In fact, I didn't mention my daughter wouldn't nurse for like ever. And I was like, I'm having something. So I worked so hard.
You didn't get the breastfeeding badge either.
I wanted the breastfeeding badge. I wanted something. I didn't get the birth I wanted. So I wanted something. So finally at 8 weeks, right before I was ready, just before I was ready to go back to work, she finally latched on, and, you know, and I was like, hallelujah, I got my badge. But it was horrible. I felt like a failure. But now looking back, I didn't, you know, I feel confident because I could fight the hospital that they did not inject her with anything while we were there, except the antibiotics. So she didn't get her vaccines. You know, they kept coming in with the paperwork, and you know, so I felt confident there. I also feel like I call her my gift from God because of her, I have my story now. I remember thinking when I went to chiropractic school that everybody had a story why they became a chiropractor. They all had these like life-changing experiences. I'm like, well, I just kind of grew up this way and I like it, you know, but I didn't ever have that big story that fueled your passion. She's my story now. And because of her, I really, really want to help the infants because of, you know, the way that kids are being born these days. And now I know, and I've experienced it, and I can empathize with the mom. So looking back, even though it was a horrible thing, I feel she's a gift, you know, and everything she went through.
Yeah, you used, you know, the phrase that you can empathize with the mom. And we actually just did an episode a couple weeks ago on sympathy versus empathy.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that, you know, having to do antibiotics and like things feeling really out of my control allows me to be softer with patients. That it's like, yeah, in an ideal world, you know, antibiotics are, your child never gets a vaccine and an antibiotic and they just grow up to be wonderful, but like, it's scary. And when you're there in that situation and it's your child, like, I don't say this very often, but like, so I knew we were not going to vaccinate our kids. Really, I didn't question it for 1 second until I was holding her. Remember, like a couple days later, she's 3 days old. This was my first,
Yeah.
no yellow spots showing up on her stomach. And I'm just looking at her and I'm like, I want to protect you from everything.
Oh.
I would do everything. So then I'm like, this, that, oh my gosh. And we didn't end up, but like, it's like we talk about it like it's just so easy to not vaccinate, or it's so easy to not give them Motrin when they've got a fever, and it's not. I mean, at least for me, it's not. I have to like be like, no, I believe in the power of the body, like, and like, and then when sometimes it does get bad enough, you go in and you're just like, please help my baby, like, please, like, please, real doctor, help my baby. Please, I
know, right?
Talk about where she got it from. I'm like,
I think that's probably the benefit of being a chiropractic kid is because I endured some of that stuff as a kid. It helped me be stronger for her when she was going through some of those things where I wasn't thinking, okay, first of all, I will never do a vaccine on her unless I'm, if I go to jail and have to do it, I don't even think I'd do it then. But anyway, because of how I grew up, that I think is my foundation and embedded in me really well. But I lost my train of thought. But I think that's the advantage, I think, of being a chiropractic kid is growing up that way, never being exposed to any other,
it's normal for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's normal. So, as my husband's freaking out about stuff, I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. And we'll check in with the doctor, make sure everything's okay. But, as the doctor's handing me a slip for antibiotics, and I'm like, does she really need it?
I'll hold on to this.
Yeah. It's,
I can refill it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. So have you felt any guilt at any point about, so you talked about like the birth, but like, do you feel like moms, chiropractic moms specifically, put more pressure or feel more guilt, like kind of going back to the Girl Scout badges? Like, where does this come from? Like, it's kind of a loaded question of like, do you think that there's any other profession that like goes through that as much as we do?
I don't know. I'm reading a lot of osteopathy stuff, and I'm seeing a lot of correlation between them and us, like the old osteopaths, and I don't know if they have something like that. Maybe the naturopaths do. I don't know. I could
see that too. Like naturopaths being like, we only use tinctures.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would think so. Just some of the people that I'm seeing, even some of the moms out there that are trying to live a holistic lifestyle, and they have to resort to giving, an antibiotic, or they're given that choice,
Yeah, that's a good point, that it's not necessarily because we're chiropractors.
Yeah.
It's we kind of feel out here going against the medical model.
Yeah.
And it's not like natural. I mean, maybe it is for you because you're a chiro kid. But like, I think it feels very unnatural to go so clearly against what the medical model and like the herd is doing. And you're like, okay, I mean, I'm going to do this thing over here, but then shoot, you kind of mess up and like, or you feel like you messed up and then you had to dip into the medical model and you're like, you question, and
yeah,
it's messy.
Yeah. So I think a lot of moms go through this, especially ones that are wanting to go more holistic for their kids, which there's a lot more of them now than I think. And that's the bad, good and bad part about social media, and that's what I was fearful for when social media became such a big thing, was that the vaccination thing is really going to get out there. Before it was like under the radar, nobody really knew, but now that people are blasting it everywhere, it's out there. So it's neat to see more and more moms that are raising kids holistically, which once, the social media stuff started, I was like, wow, where were all these women? So it's really neat, to see that. But I think the moms in general, and you probably see it in your practice too, they struggle with it, trying to decide.
One of the things that will say to moms occasionally, so like a lot of times in our clinic, we recommend once a week checks for kids, especially up until age 5. And I can kind of see this like letdown, like, cause we check in every 12 weeks just to make sure we use insight scanning, just to like make sure that this is still appropriate. Maybe do we need to do more, or maybe we can go to every other. And so I'll see this, kind of like sigh of disappointment when I'm like, your daughter's doing fantastic at weekly. We're going to stay at weekly. And the parents, they feel like there's something wrong with their kids because, again, up in here, like once a month is the golden, if you're healthy, once a month is what you need from the chiropractor. Yeah. And so I have to say to him, I said, like, okay, here's the deal is you have to realize that you are choosing a different model than most of our neighbors and society. So if you were to put on social media right now, just left the chiropractor and she recommended that I keep little Daisy on once a week for the next 2 years. And I never do 2 years, but whatever. You would get just an message after message and comment being like, that's a crook, that's a scam. Oh my gosh, you should report them. Like, because that's not our society. But if you went on social media and said, well, we just left the pediatrician's office and my 4-year-old, we're going to need to remove tonsils. So we're going to do surgery and remove one of her major immune organs. And you know what? She got put on an anxiety medication that she'll take daily for at least the next year and we'll have to check in. You would get so many comments of, that's normal. Life is hard. You would get support and people would be like, yep, sometimes that just happens. And it's like, and so I have to like kind of remind them of like, you don't want that. Society is kind of weird. We're kind of messed up in how we look at what is normal and what is abnormal. And it's okay to feel different. And because it is kind of harder over here because you don't have the herd going like, yeah, that's normal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. That's a great analogy.
So, and it kind of reminds them of like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay. That's what I know.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay. Well, so what I want to do is you mentioned that you have made lots of mistakes, like all of us have, right? I feel like I just gather a new one every year for sure. What would be one thing you'd want to leave a female chiropractor? Maybe she's feeling lonely. Maybe she is like really strong in her chiropractic philosophy, but she is just kind of feeling isolated and alone and wondering like, is this the right thing? What's a piece of advice that you would leave for her?
Oh, find a community for sure. I mean, start with the Women Chiropractors Free Group and then, reach out, to one of us on the board is probably the best because we will connect you. And that's, kind of the biggest thing this community is doing is we have small communities within this huge community. And I think just chiropractic girlfriends, and just talking, to other chiropractors really, really helps. Then you won't feel isolated,
Yeah.
or just interact on social media, in the chiropractic groups that you're comfortable with,
Yep. Yeah. Find your tribe.
Yes, exactly.
Realize you're not alone. You're not a weirdo. I mean, you might be a weirdo, but like, that's okay. Find your weirdos. There's a
weirdo.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It was great having you on. And I look forward, I know I'll for sure see you at the annual convention in May.
Yes. Yeah.
But maybe we'll run into each other at other community events before then.
That's right. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, until next week, She Slayers, have a great week and we hope you enjoyed this and we love you all so much.